there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she, her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I've found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Risha Grant, she, her, the BS Finder, international speaker and best-selling author. This week, our conversation is about Disney's new ride, a historic pardon, and inclusion at the Tokyo Marathon, and more. Let's get started. Risha, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I think your show is so awesome because we need to talk about the good things happening in DEI, and people need to know that there are great things happening in DEI. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm really excited to have this conversation. So we're both speakers, we're both writers, but one thing I'm really curious about is tell me about the BS Finder. Those happen to be my initials, by the way. So you found me, but
yeah, BS is a term I came up with a long time ago because I started in DEI 25 years ago. And everything was first and foremost about the numbers, right? It was all about, you got to have this many people, you got to do this. People were being called in, not because DEI was the right thing to do, but because they were being sued and all of this stuff. And I thought, this is all BS. And that BS meaning the bullshit, right? So I wanted to come up with something around that. So BS stands for bias synapse in my first book, and that's the brain's role in unconscious bias.
Okay.
And how it affects people, how it creates toxic work environments, and the 3 things that people can do to identify, own, and confront those biases. And now in my next book, BS stands for biosphere. And the biosphere are those circles of influence in our lives, from our family and our friends to the religion that we practice, the schools that we attend, the government we live under, and the media. How all of those things affect how we see the world and view the people in it. So the BS part of it is that all of these things affect us. But at the end of the day, how you treat people, how you show up for others, and the fact that you may not agree with how they live their lives that's BS. You don't get to treat people badly simply because you don't agree with who they are, how they live, all of those things. Because, there are a lot of things about people that I may not agree with, but I still treat them with common courtesy and respect. So I go into these corporations and I'm kind of the BS finder there. Yeah. I go in and try to root out the toxicity that's happening so that people can go in there and shine and they can be their best. So I absolutely love what I do. I love getting on the stage and having fun with that.
You just lit up talking about it. It just really beautiful to see. I love the concept of bias sphere. I mean, and thinking about it as sort of like, I think about it as my bubble. So a sphere, right? And so the lived experiences that I have that inform how I show up, and even the traumas that inform how I show up. And we're all walking around with that in the workplace. They're kind of like bouncing into each other. So I got the visual right there.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't question it because it's come from the people that we love most in the world, the institutions that we trust most in the world. The whole value system that we have, that we become a part of. So a lot of those things, we don't really think about it. Our mom said it, our grandma said it, Sunday school teacher said it, whoever, and you just roll with it until one day it smacks you in the face because maybe you have a kid that belongs to the LGBT plus community, or maybe your child marries outside of the race, or they date outside of the religion. And then all of a sudden, because you love that person, and that's the hope, because we know that some people don't have that same experience, right? But if you truly love this person in your life, you all of a sudden got to figure out how to view the world a little differently. So you got to bust that spear.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I love the metaphor. And I'm excited to hear about I'm excited to support your new book when it comes out. We'll have to get you back on the show when
It
it's.
is out.
Oh, it is the new.
It came out in August. That's the one that is on Wall Street Journal, USA Today. Like, it came
Oh,
out in
all
August.
right.
So
We will make sure that is in the
yes,
show notes.
yes,
Awesome.
I'm coming up on the 1 year anniversary. So it's called Be Better Than Your BS.
Okay. We will absolutely get that in the show notes. Fantastic.
Yes.
All right. Well, I would love to just sort of share a little story that I wrote about in the 5 Things newsletter this week.
Mhm.
So I write this weekly newsletter. It's the show as well. And so the stories, I source them from all over the place, but I have the summaries written in the newsletter. And I trained Chat GPT in my writing style by uploading samples of my writing style. And so I have Chat GP draft the initial summaries of each of the 5 stories. I then do some revisions and edits, and a couple of other folks on my team go back and do further edits. So this use of AI saves me amazing amounts of time
Right.
that I now use for pickleball to have more joy in my life, right? But I also write an intro to my newsletter every week. And that is something that AI will never do, because your unique gifts, your unique voice, your unique BS finder is you, and mine is me.
Yeah.
And that's why you and I will never be competition, because we are individuals, right? And
Exactly.
we each have our unique gifts, our personalities, our creativity, our acts of love, our generosity.
Yes.
But so many of us are walking around covered in armor. We're not sharing that uniqueness, that quirkiness with other folks, which doesn't that kind of mean we're more like robots and more like
Yes.
it, it's
Exactly
like,
what it means. Yes.
that means we're more replaceable.
Yeah. It's AI is great and it's scary.
Yeah.
So I love it for the amount of time that it gives you back in your day, but it's there are so many areas, and humanity being one of them, but so many areas where it falls short. And it's so funny to me because it knew me, right? So my partner was using AI, and it knew who I was. So she says, write this in Risha's voice, and it came back very let me very hood, right? It was like,
Oh, wow.
I said, AI thinks I'm ghetto. Like, it just it was really,
Wow.
and that was interesting because I'm like, if you're basing it off, like, I do like to have fun with my writing. I like to impart the realness of who I am. But it was so funny, the things that it was coming back with, in the way that it talked, it went immediately to the kind of this ebonics kind of thing. And I was like, okay, is it me or is it AI? I don't know.
It's not you. I mean, first of all, not that there's anything wrong with that.
First and foremost, yes, but
Wow.
but still, it was really eye-opening. And I mean, we laughed about it, but if you think about it further, like, that could really be an issue. So it's
Yeah.
so I do love AI, but like you, I try to feed it more because I'm like, I thought it would do better since it already, and I have so much stuff out there. I'm assuming that's why it was able to recognize me. But still, it has to be, and this is going into bias in AI, it has to be a little bit of me just being a Black woman, because if you read my stuff, it's not that, doesn't have that much street language and things in it. So anyway, so I think it's interesting. And we will never get the human side out of AI, and so we got to stop trying to.
And we just got to show up and express ourselves so people can give us a chance.
Yes.
And they can love on us.
Yes.
That's what we deserve, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first story this week comes from the Tokyo Marathon, which is making history by adding a non-binary category for runners starting in 2025, the last in the 5 world major marathons. So it's including non-gendered changing rooms, restrooms, and participant lists, and hopefully prize money for non-binary finishers, but that is not official yet. So good news out of Tokyo.
Yes, I think that's great. I've been saying for so long, with everything that's going on, especially in the whole gender, non-binary, trans athletes, all of those things that are happening,
Yeah.
that I think we need a new category, because
Yeah.
understand the arguments on all sides of it. And in my former life, I was an athlete, I was a Division I basketball player.
Mhm.
And, really made me think about how would I feel, if I was still out there playing, and how would I feel about a trans athlete? And, so I really deeply can understand what the athletes are feeling. But then on the other side of that, being somebody who just believes in diversity and in all of the categories and all of the things, I understand that side of it as well. And so I thought we just need to put in another category that
Mhm.
makes sense. But I also realize how expensive that is, and how much that adds to everything. I mean, when you think about putting another category onto each Olympic sport, it's like,
Mhm.
wow. So I'm very proud of what Tokyo is doing. I think it's
Mhm.
amazing. I do think if they have prizes, financial prizes for every race, that one has to be included also, because
Yeah.
that's where we get into equity.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
whether we're in a marathon or in the corporate space, you cannot. It's not fair to expect people to not have the same level of everything that everybody else has.
Yeah.
That part, we still have so much work to do. But the fact that it has happened, the fact that it's happened in Tokyo, which we know has a lot of things that they've got to catch up on as
Yes.
it relates to LGBT plus in that world, it's a step forward. And so I'm all for it.
Yeah. Great
I'm all
news.
for it.
Great news. Well, the second story comes from Disney, which has a new ride, Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It opened at Disney World over the weekend, replacing the old Splash Mountain. So, this ride is based on The Princess and the Frog. It features Disney's first black princess and becomes the first marquee ride centered on a black character. And by the way, Splash Mountain was racist. So, good job, Disney.
Yes. Yes, great job, Disney. I love it so much. I love that Disney is trying so much harder to be diverse. I remember when I was speaking, and The Little Mermaid was coming out, and I use an audience engagement tool in my speeches. So in real time, people put answers up, and I asked, "What do you find challenging about embracing DEI?" And people put up the Little Mermaid, and being a character of color and all that stuff. And I'm just like, and it was like, why do we still need the DEI? And I said, because we are actually out here fighting over a fictional character.
Yeah.
That's why. And so I love that Disney just continues to do what it wants to do, what it needs to do. The world is global. We're more connected now than we've ever been. So for people that are still sitting back saying we're not going to embrace this, you're truly behind in the world.
Yep.
You're truly looking up, and the world has moved on. And I think it's amazing. I think all kids need to see representation. They need to I mean, who didn't want to go to Disney as a kid,
Yeah.
and to be able to walk in and actually identify? And you're talking one ride. It's not like the whole park, right? has converted. I truly hope that we continue to see more and more and more diverse characters.
And by the way, as a white kid who went as a white person who went to Disney as a kid, I didn't even think about it. Like it wasn't even on my radar that there was no diversity, right? And
Yeah.
so what
Yes, of
privilege is
course.
that? What privilege. So absolutely great job, Disney. Okay,
Yes.
the third story this week comes from New York City, which is renaming the Christopher Street Sheridan Square subway station to the Christopher Street Stonewall National Monument Station to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, which is the most prominent event in the modern LGBTQ plus civil rights movement. So
Yes.
it's being changed once the governor signs the bill. Pretty exciting. I love this because we
Yes.
don't celebrate enough LGBTQ history.
No, we don't. And I just have one word for this. Yes.
Mhm.
Right? It
Yep.
is it is time. I mean, man, people lost their lives, and it's just, when I think about the courage that people had, that they had in that space and that time, and they're fighting this uphill battle, like we don't see enough of it. I mean, it always, on one hand, I feel myself saying, are we still celebrating the first this, the first that? But on the
Yeah.
other hand, yes, we are.
Yeah.
And it might take all this time, but it's happening. And that just excites me. I truly hope that as it happens, as it grows, that the money just goes back into inspiring and educating so many different people. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. And by the way, I would have nothing to write about in five things if I didn't celebrate the firsts.
Exactly. I get it. I, I get it. It's just, you just look up like, wow, we're still here, but we're
We
making
are still
steps, and
here.
we've got to embrace those steps.
That's right. Celebrate all of the wins.
Yes.
Okay, and speaking of a finally, I cannot believe this story. President Biden has finally pardoned thousands of former US service members convicted under a now repealed ban on consensual gay sex. So this means that thousands of veterans are now eligible for previously withheld benefits because they had been dishonorably discharged for being gay.
Yes.
I mean, why didn't Obama do that? Like, what?
Right.
Why?
I know. I didn't. When I read that story, I thought, are you kidding me? Like, this is just now being done. I
Yeah.
love it. I kudos to Biden. I don't know how, I don't know how the decisions are made for these things, but gosh, you would think as soon as the Supreme Court passed that decision, that would have been taken care of.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing. I hope the same thing happens with marijuana as it's being legalized
Mhm.
across the country. I
Mhm.
hope that people, that went to jail for that are able to get out. And there's so many other things like that. And I know there's so many rights, so many wrongs that we have to right,
Mhm.
that it can't all happen at the same time. But this is amazing. I'm sure these military families are celebrating everywhere.
Yeah, the disbelief is real, but thank goodness. Better late
Yes,
than never.
exactly. I'll take it.
All right. The last story this week comes from Anthropology, which has a new adaptive apparel line featuring 8 bestsellers reimagined for people with disabilities. So the products were initially thought of by their disability employee resource group, and they blend fashion and function seamlessly. And they have a collaboration with disabled influencers who are also involved in the product design. So love how they're doing this authentically, engaging their employees, their marketers, their influencers, so they get it right.
Yeah. I like you said earlier about Disney, being a kid, you never thought about the fact that it wasn't
Mhm.
diverse. Same thing with disability. And admittedly, for me, it's the weaker area of my work, because I
Mhm.
don't do that much around it.
Yeah.
So I've spoken at a couple of disability conferences, and I learned so much. I
Mhm.
learned so much because when we truly make the world better for everybody, like, it doesn't matter whether you have a disability or not. It's easier. Think about when you're carrying bags and you walk up to the door and it just opens.
Mhm.
You don't think, wow, glad they did that for people in wheelchairs. I mean, that's why they did it, but it's good for everybody. So we have to stop thinking that we're only uplifting one group of people. I've never thought about adaptive clothing, but I can only imagine. I was reading that article and it said that their number one pair of pants has been purchased 893,000 times. And then they had a dress that was, what was that number? 340,000 times. That's crazy. Like, I always ask companies, like, what do you have against making money? Are you really, really thinking about how it is that you're cutting certain segments off just by not being inclusive?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't think about it because, again, we grow up in these different worlds where these things, we don't think about these things. Nobody in our biosphere is saying to us, hey, we need to make sure these doors are open for everybody, people that have a more difficult time walking, or if they don't walk, or
Mhm.
you know we don't do the best job of that. And I think what happens when we see things like this is we realize that it's not just better for one group, it's better for all. And I tell people,
Yes.
what affects the least of us is eventually going to affect all of us, whether that's good or bad. I think this is amazing. I think being able to show that it has increased sales like ridiculously. It continue. I mean, because the numbers are there. The numbers have been there forever. So I thought that was just, I mean, Anthropology. I shop at some of their stores, but I will be definitely making sure that I go in there and support what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And we've seen other companies have adaptive apparel, adaptive Halloween costumes. That's sort of becoming a more common thing, but not in high fashion, not
No,
in real, like, not in, I think Tommy Hilfiger. There might be a few companies, but not many, and not in sort of a more upscale product line. So I
exactly.
love it. I absolutely love it. Well, it has been a treat having you on the show today, Risha. Thank you so much. How can folks get in touch with you, keep in touch with you?
All across social, it is Risha Grant. It might be Risha D Grant, I think, on on Instagram, but it's Risha Grant. I'm easy to find, so I would love to stay in touch with people. Feel free to drop me a line, and I try to answer everybody.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you. And folks, this week's call to action is to watch Origin, the book written, the Ava DuVernay's latest film based on Isabel Wilkerson's book. And it's now on Hulu and explores the mystery of history, the wonders of romance, and a fight for our future. And it's fabulous.
it's
Definitely worth
great.
it.
It is a
Yeah,
great. It will change your thinking.
absolutely. Folks, if you don't already get the Five Things newsletter, you can subscribe at fivethingsdei.com. Thank you so much. Have a great week.